Well, the good news for Roger Federer fans is that this draw actually looks pretty good for Roger and not so good for Djokovic and Rafa. The bad news, Indian Wells, even slower, I've heard, even slower and higher bouncing than last year. But the best news for all tennis fans is that we got a third-round match that is exactly what I was hoping for. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we take a look at the Indian Wells draw and analyze Roger, Rafa, and Djokovic's draws. We'll also talk about a couple interesting matchups. Also, we've got here this Peter Bodo article from ESPN.com, Can Federer and Nadal stop Djokovic and Indian Wells? And we've got a very interesting stats from the stats guru, Craig O'Shaughnessy. Also at the end of the video, a quick thing I wanted to say after reading some comments from my last video, just wanted to address one little thing. All that and nothing more on tonight's edition, Indian Wells Draw Show edition of Coffee Break Tennis. So before I get into the 2019 Indian Wells draw, men's draw. Only have time for the men's draw tonight. Let's look at this Peter Bodo thing here really quick. So, Indian Wells is a special time of the year, and this is going to be one of the most... March, with Miami factored in it as well, is a special time of the tennis year. March is a very big month for tennis fans. And this year is going to be even more interesting because Novak Djokovic, as Peter Bodo starts off with, handily beat Rafa Nadal in the Australian Open final and has returned to being the most dominant figure in men's tennis. Then quotes Brad Gilbert saying, Gilbert said, "If Djokovic continues to play at this level, no one can stop him." So that is the big question. You know, Peter Freeman, who is the founder of Crunch Time Coaching, head sponsor of Coffee Break Tennis, teaching tennis genius guru, Peter Freeman would always say that Stan Wawrinka, when he's playing his best, can beat anyone. And I think Stan still has some tennis like that in him. Maybe not right now. I think he's going to play pretty well right now. But the question for me is Djokovic at a place now where when he's playing close enough to his best, he's going to beat everyone? I still think Roger Federer playing at his best can bring the offensive firepower on the right surface to play Djokovic. But will we even get Novak Djokovic? Because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it is very likely, after everything we saw in Acapulco, Novak Djokovic is going to have to deal with Nick Kyrgios as soon as the third round of this tournament. The task facing Federer is enormous. At the moment, Federer appears to be in a better position to halt the Serbian juggernaut. The all-time Grand Slam singles champion, this sounds nice, who just won his 100th career singles title on Saturday in Dubai, is thrilled with that achievement. And Federer might be 37, but he's playing with house money and feeling no pressure to prove anything. I think that's true. And of course, that's a little different than last year when Roger Federer was riding, I don't remember how many, it was a big winning streak though. He won 7 matches at the Aussie Open, he won in Rotterdam, and he won all the way to Del Potro in the final, and then he had that first loss of the year. In the Dubai final, Federer hit roughly 40% of his ground strokes from inside the baseline. That is always going to do good things for you. About twice the percentage hit by Stefanos Tsitsipas. This played a major role in Federer's ability to dismantle the rising Greek star in a mere 69 minutes. True, Tsitsipas isn't quite in Djokovic's league as a defender or counter-puncher. But I said that funny. But there is a level of offense that can take the racket out of any defender's hand. Federer is one of the few pros capable of hitting that standard. I still think, I'm glad Bodo said that Federer can bring the offense to take the racket out of even defense master Djokovic's hands. Now, this is a slower and higher bouncing surface, but we saw in 2017, Roger Federer was able to do pretty well with that. He was able to do pretty well with it last year. And you're going to see in the next thing I read to you from stats guru Craig O'Shaughnessy, who, by the way, I forgot to mention this. In the Australian Open, I cited some stats that Craig O'Shaughnessy showed about how offensive Nadal was playing, more offensive than like ever at this year's Australian Open. And I thought that was the reason why Rafa would be able to bring so much attacking tennis that he could possibly beat Djokovic. But I was wrong. And one thing I meant to point out in the video that I forgot to do, that I'll do now, I was reminded of because in the next article it says in the very bottom of it, editor's note, Craig O'Shaughnessy is a member of Novak Djokovic's coaching team. So you better believe any of these interesting stats, Djokovic has the inside scoop and beyond because Shaughnessy's on his staff, on his team. In regards to Nadal dealing with Djokovic, according to back to here Bodo, Nadal can't bring the same measure of offense. He has even greater things to fret about. Off clay, his confidence just isn't the same. Even if his fighting spirit remains unfettered, it has been a rough few months for Nadal. He goes on to talk about what happened in Acapulco and the Kyrgios and how bad he got beat in the Australian Open final by Joker. The encouraging thing for the King of Clay is his history at Indian Wells, where he goes on to say that Nadal plays very aggressively at Indian Wells. And, Nadal has something going for him there. Nadal can use his big high-bouncing forehand. He gets more RPM on his forehand than anybody on tour. He can use that to his advantage at Indian Wells, where it'll move pretty quick because it's a hard court, even if it's a slower hard court, and it will bounce very high. Indian Wells always bounces very high. Now, we look at this Big Three stat from Craig O'Shaughnessy. Very interesting. So it turns out on tour, this is going back to 2011 to 2018 data from all the Masters 1000s and the Nito Suito Benito ATP World Tour Finals. On hard courts and clay courts, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, when they get the first serve back into play, if they against all the people they play. So it's not counting only like the best servers, it's counting all ATP Pro servers who make it into the draws at the Masters and the finals. They are almost 50% of the time going to win the point. If they just, even Federer, just blocking it back into play off the first serve. That is pretty amazing. So Djokovic, no surprise, a little over 52% win when he gets the first serve back in play on a hard court. Federer just under 49.4%, so just under 50. Nadal just under about 1% shorter at 1% under Roger at 48.5 for Nadal. On clay, no surprise, Nadal is on top. And there was a comment in one of the last videos saying, Matt, why do you think Federer is going to do plenty of losing on clay? Look, I think Federer, compared to your average tour player, is going to do pretty good on clay. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do what you'd expect from Rafa. And Djokovic on clay, he hasn't been there in a while. I wouldn't be surprised by it all. I'm not going to bet against him, but I'm not going to expect a lot because just for the same reason, this number doesn't surprise me. Federer's 46% compared to Nadal and Djokovic over 50. Federer 46.9, 47 really. And then they break down deuce versus ad. Djokovic, no surprise, is really good at returning tee serves on both clay and hard court, both deuce and ad court. No surprise there because usually you protect against angles out wide when you're returning serves, so you give them a little bit of the tee, and Djokovic has the ability to stretch out like the Gumby Stretch Armstrong guy and reach those serves going down the tee. Federer and Nadal surprisingly get some high numbers on body serves, over 60%. Federer on clay, doing very well with the deuce body serve as well as the wide body serve. Federer is the king of winning when he gets your first serve back on clay in the deuce court for body and wide. So if you're playing Federer on clay anytime soon, serve down the tee to his backhand exclusively. Nadal likes that serve too. It's a good serve for a lefty. So we'll keep that, and we'll keep that in mind because that made me think, if there's one thing you don't want to play, especially Indian Wells where you can big servers can make serves bounce very high, you don't want to play a guy who's really good at hitting first serves that don't get put back into play. Remember, this is against all players on tour, so Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, the big three, they will win half the time when they get the first serve back in play. Guys like Isner, Nick Kyrgios, and another guy in the Djokovic draw potentially are very good at making sure you don't get their first serves back in play. So let's look at this draw. To me, the most interesting thing is that on top of the draw, Djokovic will very likely have to play after beating a qualifier. Nick Kyrgios will have to beat either Cole Pickle or Herbert. I think he can do it after we saw in Acapulco. Hopefully, Nick Kyrgios said when he saw the draw in Acapulco, I don't even remember who he played first. Who was it? It was somebody pretty good. Anyways, Kyrgios said he knew he had to get through that first round because he really wanted to play Nadal. And that's in Acapulco. It's an exciting tournament, but this is Indian Wells. I mean, some people call this the fifth slam. To play Novak Djokovic after what happened to Aussie Open, I mean, he's the top dog right now, right? To play him in the third round in front of everyone at Indian Wells, Nick Kyrgios is probably going to make it. So we'll get to see that. Nick Kyrgios is going to be able to hit some first serves that Djokovic, as great of a return as he is, definitely won't be able to get back and play if Nick Kyrgios really brings it. If Djokovic were able to get through Kyrgios, could potentially play Monfils, Cecchinato, Riley Opelka. I know no one's expecting the wild card, but Riley Opelka, he beat Isner at the Australian Open this year. I think he did something in Delray Beach. Maybe I was watching him another time this year. Anyways, he's just got one of those serves. Would I expect him to beat Djokovic? I don't know. But did we expect Isner to beat Djokovic at Indian Wells that one year? So a little tricky. But then after that, who's Djokovic going to have to worry about? Dominic Thiem? Basilashvili, he's been getting a lot better. Borna Coric, we know that he's not really where he was before. Gil Simon, Chickenado. Nothing too special going on there. So Djokovic, if he can get through Kyrgios, if the match happens, I hope it does, then he has a pretty clear shot. Who could he face in the semis of this section? Who looks really good? I like Tsitsipas. Sasha Zverev, of course, is the 3 seed. He could run into Grigor Dimitrov, Raonic, Sam Querrey, Alex de Minaur. Zverev should be able to get through. I wouldn't be shocked to see Tsitsipas get through and beat Zverev. And Kevin Anderson's been hurt, so who knows what he's going to do. This Laszlo Jiri guy's been pretty good on clay lately, so maybe he can take advantage of a slower, high-bouncing hard court. Batista Agut, that'll be interesting, possibly. That could be a 3rd-round match for Tsitsipas and Batista Agut, which, honestly, if Batista Agut had more legs under him in that quarterfinal of the Aussie Open, you would have thought he would have won that day because Tsitsipas struggled a little. Very interesting. Most interesting second-round match is going to be, possibly, if he beats Cam Norrie, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Now, Pete, Crunch Time Coaching, tennis teaching guru, and genius Peter Freeman, thinks that Felix Auger-Aliassime is like a young Djokovic. And I've heard for a while now that he was the real true talent, better than Shapovalov. So getting to see him play Tsitsipas. And, of course, he just had a final at an ATP 500 on clay, so I would love to see Tsitsipas and Auger-Aliassime play because, those are two guys that could be very high in the rankings when we talk about looking 5 years into the future. Heck, Tsitsipas is top 10 already. Who knows how long it'll take Auger-Aliassime to get there if he continues doing what he's doing. So there you go. Really hope to see a Djokovic and Tsitsipas semifinal. That would be super cool. Let's look at the bottom half of the draw, and then we'll talk about Kyrgios for 1 second, and then we'll get out of here. So like I said, it's going to be bad for big three guys to have to run into guys who are really good at making sure you can't put their first serve into play. Now, John Isner, I know not everyone has faith in him all the time, but he's got that serve. He's a talented guy. He won Miami last year. He's going to be very motivated to do well here. Nadal could play John Isner. Of course, that would be a quarterfinal. Nadal could play Roger Federer. That would be a semifinal. Of course, that's what we all want. Nadal, pretty easy early on. He could play Danny Medvedev. That could be tough. That would be a 4th round. Karen Khachanov, not been good lately. I'd probably see Tomas Birdman Berdych come through there. John Isner, nothing too crazy for him. Maybe he could play Ernest Gulbis. I think it's very likely that we see Isner and Nadal. And is Nadal ready to go through John Isner right now? I don't know. Where's his confidence at? I would pick him to win, but it's going to be tricky, and it's going to be tougher than anything Roger will have to face. This is a good... Now, Roger could play Stan very early. Where could they play? Is it the 3rd round? Yeah, Roger will play Andreas Seppi or Gojo, who I saw Roger play not the easiest match in the world in Cincinnati. And that was fun to see Federer play. So he could play Gojo or Seppi, not too big of a deal there. He could play Fucsovic, who again, Roger got really mad playing Fucsovic in Dubai. Remember that match? Roger, though, should be able to get through there. I mean, he just beat him. Stan Wawrinka, though, is who we think Roger will play, not Fucsovic. I still like Roger over Stan. But Stan, when he's on, can beat anyone, like Pete says. Fonini, Cilic, Shapovalov, Luca Pui, who was very good at the Australian Open. Nishikori, not so great lately. Tennis Sandgren, Adrian Manarino are in there. Any other names floating around? So, of course, we'll hang on to this and not get rid of it. Comment below what you think about this draw while I sip on some sparkling Italian mineral water. I think it's a good draw for Roger Federer, and I know this is a higher bouncing, slower court, not Roger's favorite, but he's done well here the last 2 years he's been in the final, winning it in 2017, of course. And don't forget, Roger really handled Rafa in 2017 here at Indian Wells. So it would be awesome to see them play again. Not 100% sure Rafa would be able to get through John Isner if John Isner made it there. Again, comment below what you think. To me, it comes down to 3 things, really. What the heck is going to happen with Nick Kyrgios and Novak Djokovic? Will we get to see Rafa and Roger? Will we get to see Roger and Novak? Of course, will we get to see Rafa and Novak takes the place of that if Rafa was able to get through Roger? Because it'd be interesting to see the rematch after the Australian Open, although I would kind of expect a straight sets win for Djokovic after what happened. But you never know. That's why they play it. So again, what happens with Kyrgios? Big question. We saw the potential. Is it going to be your typical letdown that you would expect from Nick Kyrgios? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Got to watch that. An honorable mention, number 4, would be Tsitsipas and Auger Aliassime. That could be very interesting to see. Sasha Zverev and Tsitsipas also could be pretty interesting to see. But what combination will we get to see of the big 3 playing each other? Roger and Rafa? Could happen. Roger and Djokovic? It feels like it's very likely. But you comment below what you think. Last thing, let me just say, after reading some of the comments in the last video, one thing, my idea was definitely confirmed that, love him or hate him, Nick Kyrgios elicits major response rate from tennis fans, from people. Anyone who watches him has strong feelings, which is a good thing for the sport of tennis, of course. Now, some people got really political with their comments, and that's not what I meant to do there. I wasn't trying to say Nick Kyrgios is, obviously he plays sports, and Trump is the leader of the United States. So not much comparison there on their jobs and what they're like. The only thing I was trying to emphasize in the last video is their relationship with the media, the way they can suck up all the media oxygen, the way they can just dominate the headlines, and the way they get a really strong response, love or hate, from everyone who has to see them. And if they are relevant, we will have to see them. If Trump didn't win the election, he wouldn't be so relevant, wouldn't be such of a big a deal, wouldn't hear about him so much. If Nick Kyrgios doesn't win, he's not very relevant. But when he wins, and he wins the way he did in Acapulco, he's super relevant, and he will get big reactions, big response, lots of love, lots of hate. I'm not trying to say Kyrgios is the devil or anything like that. I like Nick Kyrgios for the most part. I think some of the stuff he does is kind of, what's the word? Douche? I think it's a French word. Sometimes, at times, but again, he's a very young guy. I can't put enough emphasis on how much of a douche I have been in my early 20s, which is glad I have the show now in my early 30s rather than having the show in my early 20s. So there you go. If you had your feelings hurt about Nick Kyrgios, just want to put that out there. He's a nice young man. Most players seem to really like him. Me and Pete, when we got a chance to talk to him in Cincinnati a couple years ago, we really liked him too. He was really nice to us. So that's it for us. Again, comment below. What do you think of this draw? What do you think is going to happen? I just can't wait to see what happens with Kyrgios and Djokovic. Like I said in the last video, Kyrgios 2-0 against Djokovic. I know maybe it's not Djokovic at his best in those matches, but that's got to be something on Djokovic's mind. And you better believe Djokovic saw what happened in Acapulco. See ya!